Nigga, I don't need Jay to go on tour.
Yo, smoke hard coke, yo.
Yo, chill. Yo, chill.
You look like you need to live, nigga. You look like you need to.
I started in Dubai, man. For the country, we do shit that these motherfuckers don't do.
That's
they
a,
look like us.
That's a fact.
Look, they look like us. They smell like us, but they not.
I never ran from anything because I didn't have nobody to go to. I've always had that, where I'm going. Home to get me. Ain't nobody there.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so I've always been in a situation where I'm forced to deal with it myself. So.
Jim Jones picked the wrong moment and the wrong people to play with this time, because Uncle Murda was never going to let this slide. What started as a simple comment about loyalty quickly turned into a full breakdown of how power really works in hip-hop. Once Jim tried to clown Tony Yayo for saying 50 Cent takes better care of his artists than Jay-Z, the situation shifted fast. That comment didn't live in a vacuum. It touched history, relationships, and real-life experiences that can't be brushed off with jokes. Tony Yayo wasn't attacking Jay-Z. He wasn't dissing him. He was speaking from his own life. He explained that when it comes to loyalty, support, and consistency, 50 Cent has always shown up. Not just when cameras are on, not just when money is flowing, but when things are quiet and nobody's watching. Yayo said 50 never forgot who stood next to him when he had nothing, and that loyalty has never changed. That truth hit a nerve. Jim Jones jumped in and tried to flip the narrative. He mocked Yayo, saying he still leans on 50, trying to make loyalty sound like weakness. He framed it like Yayo couldn't stand on his own without 50, as if that was something to be ashamed of. But that angle backfired instantly. Because in hip-hop, leaning on someone who puts you on and still has your back isn't weakness, it's respect. That's when Uncle Murda stepped in, and when he spoke, people listened. Murda has seen both sides. He's been around Rockefeller, he's been around G-Unit. He didn't speak from rumor or internet talk, he spoke from experience. And when he said, Jay got business partners, but 50 got brothers, it stopped the conversation cold. That line wasn't meant to sound clever, it was meant to be real. Jay-Z moves like a company, 50 Cent moves like family. That doesn't make one evil and the other perfect, but it explains why people feel differently about them. Murda wasn't attacking Jay's success, he was pointing out how Jay treats people once their value changes. According to Uncle Murda, Jay-Z never showed him the kind of support 50 did. His time around Jay was short and it didn't lead to growth, security, or long-term opportunity. But when Murda linked with 50, things changed. Not overnight, but steadily. He got guidance, he got real chances, he got life-changing support, including his first house. That wasn't for show, that was real. Tony Yayo backed that up. He explained that 50 doesn't just hand people money and disappear. He teaches them how to move, how to save, how to invest, how to think long-term. Yayo said 50 encouraged him to buy property, not just jewelry, to build something that lasts. That mindset is rare in the industry. Jim Jones tried to reduce all of that to jokes, but the internet didn't agree. Fans felt Jim inserted himself where he didn't belong. This wasn't about Dipset, this wasn't about Jim, this was about loyalty versus convenience, and Jim's record made people question his position. Online reactions were brutal. People brought up Jim's past comments, his switches, and his constant need to stay relevant. Some reminded everyone that Jim recently said he was better than Nas, which already damaged his credibility. Others said Jim always jumps into situations to keep his name buzzing. But Uncle Murda's words cut through all of that noise because they came with weight. He wasn't chasing attention, he was explaining a pattern, Jay-Z's pattern. Jay-Z is respected as a businessman, nobody denies that. But his history with people close to him is complicated. Dame Cash helped build Rockefeller, but once business went left, Jay moved on without looking back. Beanie Siegel gave his heart to the label, but when trouble came, he was left alone. Kanye West helped redefine Jay's sound, but once things got messy, distance followed. Then there's Jaz-O, the man who helped Jay find his voice early on. Once Jay made it, Jazz was no longer needed. No public support, no loyalty returned. And DeHaven, someone from Jay's own neighborhood, someone who stood beside him early, ended up labeled and pushed out completely. That situation still hurts people who watched it unfold. Jay doesn't move off emotion, he moves off strategy. Once the business no longer benefits both sides, the relationship fades. That's how corporations work, and Jay runs like a corporation. 50 Cent runs differently. His people are still around. Tony Yayo, Lloyd Banks, Uncle Murda. Even when things aren't hot, the relationships stay intact. The only ones who disappear are the ones who switch sides or move funny. That's why Jim's attempt to clown loyalty backfired, because loyalty is the one thing Jim himself has been questioned on for years. From Dipset drama to industry alliances, people have watched him move with opportunity, not principle. Uncle Murda didn't just defend 50, he exposed the deeper issue. Hip-hop isn't just about money, it's about how you treat people when the spotlight moves. Jay-Z wins business battles, 50 Cent wins loyalty battles, and depending on who you are, one matters more than the other. The internet split because both sides reflect real life. Some people believe business should always come first. Others believe loyalty should never be optional. That's why this debate hit so hard. People saw themselves in it. Jay-Z's supporters argued that he doesn't owe anyone anything, that he helped who he could and moved on when things changed. They said not everything needs to be public, that generosity doesn't have to be loud. 50's supporters argued that real loyalty doesn't disappear when things slow down, that support shouldn't expire, that the people who helped you climb deserve respect even when they're no longer useful. Jim Jones stood in the middle of that argument and chose the wrong side to joke about. Instead of staying quiet, he mocked loyalty. And Uncle Murda made sure to remind him that loyalty is the reason 50's name still rings the way it does. This situation wasn't really about Jay-Z versus 50 Cent. It was about values, about how you define success, about whether you see people as partners or brothers. Jay built an empire. 50 built a family. Both are powerful, but only one creates bonds that last decades. And that's why Uncle Murda's words mattered. He wasn't picking sides for clout. He was telling the truth as he lived it. And once that truth hit the internet, it couldn't be taken back. Jim Jones may keep talking, but the damage is already done. This conversation exposed what people already felt, but hadn't fully said out loud. Loyalty still matters, and when it's real, it doesn't need defending. That's why this debate isn't going anywhere, because it's bigger than rap. It's about how you move when you reach the top. As the debate kept growing, more people started looking at how both Jay-Z and 50 Cent built their circles over time. The difference became clearer the more you studied it. Jay's world is built around business roles. When someone fits the plan, they're close. When the plan changes, so does the relationship. That approach helped him build a massive empire, but it also left behind a long list of people who felt cut off once their role ended. Uncle Murda didn't say Jay was wrong for that. He said it's just how Jay moves. But he also made it clear that this style leaves scars. When someone gives years of loyalty and sacrifice, then gets treated like a stranger later, that pain doesn't fade. It stays with you. And Murda spoke from that pain, not from hate. That's why his words landed so hard. He wasn't guessing, he lived it. He watched how fast things went cold once his value wasn't seen as high anymore. And when he compared that experience to how 50 treated him, the difference was night and day. With 50, Murda said the support never felt temporary. There were no empty promises, no fake smiles, no sudden silence. 50 didn't disappear once the cameras were gone. He stayed present. He stayed involved. He made sure the people around him were growing, not just surviving. Tony Yayo added more detail to that. He explained that 50 never wanted his people stuck in one lane. He wanted them to learn business, not just music. He wanted them to own things, not just spend. That mindset changed lives. It turned short-term success into long-term stability. Yayo said when 50 gives advice, it's not about showing off wealth. It's about building discipline. That's why he encouraged buying houses instead of just chains, why he pushed saving instead of flexing, why he treated success like a responsibility, not a reward. That approach created loyalty that money can't buy, not because 50 pays people to stay, but because he invests in them as people. And that's what Jim Jones failed to understand when he mocked Yayo for still being close to 50. The internet quickly pointed that out. Fans said Jim was confusing independence with isolation. You don't prove strength by cutting off the people who helped you rise. You prove it by standing with them when you don't have to anymore. That criticism hit Jim hard because it touched on his own history. People remembered how Dipset fell apart, how relationships cracked, how unity didn't last, and they started asking why loyalty always seems shaky around Jim. At the same time, Jay-Z stayed silent again. No response, no defense, no comment. And that silence worked in his favor and against him at the same time. It protected his image, but it also allowed the stories to grow without correction. Fans revisited old interviews from people once close to Jay. Again and again, the same theme showed up. Respect for his mind, respect for his success, but disappointment in how relationships ended. That doesn't make Jay a villain, it makes him a businessman. But hip-hop isn't only business, it's culture, it's relationships, it's shared struggle, and that's where the disconnect comes in. 50 Cent understands that balance better than most. He plays business hard, but he doesn't erase history. If you were there during the grind, he remembers, and he makes sure the world remembers too. That's why Uncle Murda felt comfortable speaking up, because he knew 50 wouldn't turn his back on him for telling the truth. That kind of trust is rare, especially at that level. Jim Jones didn't have that kind of backing in this moment. Nobody stepped in to defend his comment strongly. Nobody from his circle jumped out to support his angle, and that silence spoke loudly. The situation kept shifting away from Jim and closer to a bigger conversation. What does loyalty really look like at the top? Is it optional, or is it the foundation? Some fans argued that Jay-Z's way is realistic, that business can't be emotional, that loyalty without value leads to loss. Others argued that once you forget the people who helped you rise, you lose something deeper than money. That split explains why this story refuses to die. It's not just about Jay or 50, it's about how people live their own lives, who they keep around, who they let go, and why. Uncle Murda didn't say everyone should move like 50. He just said don't pretend loyalty doesn't matter when it clearly does to so many people. And don't clown someone for staying loyal when loyalty is the reason they're still standing. Jim Jones tried to laugh it off, but the culture wasn't laughing. They saw a pattern, and once patterns are exposed, they don't disappear. This moment added another layer to Jim's image that he didn't need, another reason for people to question his judgment, another reminder that sometimes staying quiet is the smartest move. And through it all, 50 Cent didn't have to say much. His people spoke for him. Their stories spoke for him. Their loyalty spoke for him. That's real power. As time passed, the conversation stopped being about one comment and turned into a lesson about how legacies are shaped. People realized that success is not only measured by numbers or titles, but by who is still standing beside you years later. That's where the gap between Jay-Z and 50 Cent became impossible to ignore. Jay-Z's circle has always been small and controlled. He keeps distance by design. That keeps power balanced in his favor, but it also limits emotional connection. When someone leaves his world, they usually leave completely. There are no public reunions, no repaired bonds, just silence and separation. That silence has followed many people who once helped build his rise. Some moved on quietly, others spoke out years later, still carrying frustration, not because they wanted money, but because they wanted acknowledgement, a sign that what they gave mattered. Uncle Murda touched on that feeling without naming every person. He explained how being erased hurts more than being cut off. When history gets rewritten and your role disappears, it feels like you never existed at all. With 50 Cent, history stays visible. Even when relationships cool, the past is still respected. He may joke, argue, or fall out with people, but he rarely pretends they didn't matter. That honesty keeps the door open, even when things aren't perfect. Tony Yayo explained that 50 doesn't believe in using people and moving on. He believes in building with them until they can stand on their own. That's why so many people around him still speak with pride, not bitterness. This is why Jim Jones's comment created such a strong reaction. He wasn't just teasing, he was dismissing a value that many people hold close. When he mocked Yayo for staying loyal, it felt like he was mocking loyalty itself. That didn't sit right with fans, because hip-hop was built on shared struggle, crews, blocks, day ones. Cutting those ties for image or pride goes against the culture's roots. People began asking if Jay-Z would even defend Jim's position if things escalated. Most believed he wouldn't. Jay doesn't jump into public fights for anyone. That's not how he moves. And that realization made Jim's stance look even weaker. At the same time, people noticed how quickly 50 Cent's people defended him without being asked. No contracts, no pressure, just respect. That difference stood out more than any insult ever could. This debate also exposed how differently artists prepare their people for life after music. Jay-Z focuses on partnerships for those who can keep up. 50 focuses on survival and growth for everyone in his circle. Neither method is wrong, but one creates distance and the other creates bonds. Jim Jones ended up stuck between those two worlds. He wanted to sound independent, but instead he sounded disconnected. He wanted to look strong, but he came off dismissive. As more voices joined the discussion, Jim's comment faded into the background, replaced by the bigger truth it revealed. Loyalty isn't outdated, it's just rare, and when people see it, they recognize it instantly. Uncle Murda didn't gain anything from speaking up. He didn't sell anything, he didn't chase headlines, he simply told his story, and because it came from lived experience, it carried weight. That's why his words still circulate. They reminded people that real power isn't just about how high you climb, it's about who climbs with you and who you carry once you're there. Jay-Z's legacy will always be about vision and control. 50 Cent's legacy will always be about resilience and loyalty. Both will be studied, both will be debated. But in this moment, the culture chose the side that felt human, and that's something no amount of business success can replace. Does not erase greatness. If anything, it sharpens it. And Nas is living proof of that. Instead of fading, he evolved. Instead of chasing trends, he refined his craft. That kind of growth scares people who rely on moments instead of mastery. Jim Jones kept talking about being active in the present, about being outside, about still being in the mix. But being active and being effective are not the same thing. You can be around without moving anything forward. And critics began to say that Jim's recent run felt more like noise than progress. The more Jim explained himself, the more defensive he sounded. He kept returning to numbers, charts, and visibility. But those things rise and fall. They are unstable. Legacy is built on consistency, not spikes. Nas has been consistent for over 3 decades. That's not opinion, that's fact. People also started asking why Jim even needed this comparison. If he truly believed in his own lane, why step into someone else's? Why measure yourself against a standard that was never meant for you? That question lingered heavily, and no answer Jim gave fully addressed it. 50 Cent saw all of this and leaned into it. He didn't just clown Jim for entertainment. He was making a point. He wanted people to see how ego can destroy credibility, how chasing validation can erase respect, and how quickly the industry turns when it senses weakness. 50 has always understood perception. He knows hip-hop rewards confidence but punishes arrogance. There's a difference between believing in yourself and discrediting others to feel bigger. Jim crossed that line, and the reaction proved it. Another layer that made this situation worse was timing. Nas was enjoying a peaceful, respected moment in his career. Fans across generations were celebrating his run, awards, performances, critical praise, and then suddenly someone tries to downplay it. That doesn't come off as bravery, it comes off as jealousy. Jim tried to frame his comments as generational truth, but hip-hop doesn't erase its elders, it builds on them. Every rapper today benefits from what came before. Ignoring that isn't confidence, it's denial. The industry itself stayed quiet. No major artists rushed to support Jim's claims. No big names echoed his words. That silence spoke louder than any diss. When the culture doesn't back you, that's a sign. Meanwhile, Nas's silence continued to frustrate Jim's side, because silence leaves no target. You can't argue with someone who won't engage. You can't escalate when the other side refuses to play. That calm control is something Jim couldn't match. 50 Cent even hinted that this was never about Nas alone. He suggested Jim wanted attention from higher powers, wanted approval, wanted access, and history supports that idea. Jim has always been close to power, but never in control of it. That's the difference between players and pieces. As discussions continued, fans revisited Jim's biggest moments: Ballin', Dipset era, reality TV, fashion influence, all respectable, all impactful, but none of it matched the artistic weight of Nas's catalog. And instead of celebrating his own lane, Jim chose comparison. That choice will follow him forever. Hip-hop has a long memory. It remembers who stood tall and who folded, who spoke with honor and who spoke out of turn. Once a narrative forms, it's hard to escape. 50 Cent knows this better than anyone. He survived beefs, blackballing, lawsuits, and losses. He understands how fast the game can turn. That's why he protects legacies so fiercely, even when it's not his own. He doesn't need Nas's approval, but he respects the ground Nas laid, and disrespecting that ground feels personal to him. That's why he went so hard. Jim, on the other hand, looked increasingly trapped by his own words. Every attempt to clarify only reopened the wound. Every defense sounded like retreat, and the culture noticed. At some point, the conversation stopped being about who raps better. It became about knowing when to speak and when to stay quiet, about understanding your role without feeling threatened by others' success. That lesson hit especially hard for younger artists watching. They saw how fast confidence can turn into criticism, how quickly bold talk becomes backlash, and how dangerous it is to chase comparison instead of carving your own legacy. Nas didn't need to say a word to teach that lesson. His career already did. 50 Cent, as usual, enjoyed the chaos but stayed sharp. He didn't overplay his hand. He said enough, then watched the reaction unfold. That's power, knowing when to strike and when to step back. Jim Jones wanted to prove he belonged in the legend conversation. Instead, he reminded everyone why legends are rare. This moment will follow him. Every future interview, every claim, every comparison. People will remember this. And in hip-hop, once a moment defines you, it doesn't fade easily. The culture moves on, but it never forgets.